all know me. Know how I earn a living. This shark, swallow you whole. I value my neck a lot more than $3,000, Chief. Find him for 3, but I'll catch him and kill him for 10. $10,000 for me by myself. For that you get the head, the tail, the whole damn thing.
You yell shark. We've got a panic on our hands on the 4th of July.
Mr. Vaughn, I pulled a tooth the size of a shot glass out of the wreck hull of the boat out there, and it was the tooth of a great white.
A what?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Love to prove that, wouldn't you? Get your name into the National Geographic.
No, I'm not saying that this is not the shark. It probably is, Martin. It probably is. It's a man-eater. It's extremely rare for these waters. But the fact is that the bite radius on this animal is different than the wounds on the victim.
Get out of that
Well, this is not a boat accident. There wasn't any propeller. There wasn't any coral reef. And it wasn't Jack the Ripper.
It was a shark.
I'll never put on a life jacket again.
Welcome back to the Jaws Obsession, where we are here to share with you, prove to you, convince you, or remind you that Jaws is the greatest movie of all time. Thank you very much for returning, for coming back into the Jaws Obsession for the 100th episode, 100 times into the Jaws Obsession, Jaws Retcon 2027. And this has been a long time coming, because to get to 100 episodes analyzing the greatest movie of all time, Jaws, has been quite the effort. And also, I've operated on a lot of support by all of you out there listening or watching in the Jaws Obsession. And to be at episode 100, I do not take lightly at all. That's why I am launching a new movement, a new quest, Jaws Retcon 2027. We're going to get into all of that right now. We're going to explain all of that, what's going on here. We have come this far, and we have so much further to go. Together, we have traveled on this journey a very great distance from when we started, when I started back in August of 2020 with the first movements of the Book of Quint, and then the Jaws Obsession started December of 2021, and here we are on the 100th episode. I have been leading up to this in the past few episodes that this was going to be very special. So we're not going to phone this in. We're not going to do an anthology, or we're not going to do a recap or replay any things from the past. What's in the past is there, and we're going to learn from that, and we're going to grow, and we're going to move forward, because some very special things I believe we can do because we have all stood together, and it is very exciting. We're going to go to listennotes.com. We're going to show that the Jaws Obsession currently is ranked in the 2%. The listen score has been upgraded to 39. It's a metric that's estimated the popularity of this podcast. This podcast is one of the top 2% most popular shows out of 3,738,835 podcasts. So 3.7 million podcasts, and we are now in the top 2%. Remember, we used to be in 3%, then we went up to 2.5%, and now we are in the top 2%. The audience base is growing. We've also incorporated video, which you are watching either on Spotify or YouTube, and that has also grown the audience. So what's interesting here is that even though these metrics are all fractured and scattered around, a lot of shows are either based, a lot of their views or their shows are on one platform, maybe Spotify or maybe just YouTube, but we're everywhere and we are ubiquitous. If you're on Apple, iTunes, if you're listening on Audible, you can be listening on Pandora. Anywhere we are, anywhere that a podcast is available, the Jaws Obsession has been there. And we have been there, and we've been able to do this. So to get to top 2% with a podcast that is surrounded off only one film, I find that to be truly an accomplishment there. That is very special, but it's also a testament to all of you who show up and share these episodes, listen. You also like, share, and subscribe on whatever platform you're watching or viewing on, and I can't thank you enough. So for the 100th episode, it's only fitting that we're now upgraded to the top 2 percentile in the world of all podcasts. Very exciting time. It's a very exciting time to be here. For this 100th episode, I did say there was a new mountain. We have a new quest. We have a new journey that we are going to go on. And we're not going to waste any time. I'm going to get right into it because the clock is ticking. And as you've seen before, with the way the Book of Quint was born, we did something that was never done before. That the Book of Quint was written largely and researched largely in the public spotlight. No other author has ever done that. If there was going to be a prequel to Jaws, it would have to hold up to the scrutiny, but also the gravitas of the moment. That Jaws is the greatest movie of all time, as we've said here over and over again. We had to earn that respect. And that's where I was able to not only write the Book of Quint, but do that in the public eye, in front of all of you when we were an audio-based only podcast. After that has happened, we have the Book of Quint now that is out. It's a best-selling audiobook on Audible. It's also on Spotify, Apple iBooks. You can listen to the audiobook there. We have micro printings that have come out and then sold out. We've gone through paperback. We've been published in other countries. And now we are going through the special edition hardcover is out there as well. But what we're doing now is that we have to look at Jaws turned 50. And we always said this, Jaws turns 50 in 2025. So we celebrated the 50th anniversary of Jaws. But then what happens next? What is coming up next? What about the next 50 years? What will Jaws look like? And that is where we're going to have to get into defining the term retcon. What exactly is retcon? What does that mean? What does that stand for? And then we're going to go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary here. Okay, retcon, the act, practice, or result of changing an existing fictional narrative by introducing new information in a later work that recontextualizes previously established events, characters, etc. In a film and television series or other fictional work, retcon means a piece of new information that imposes a different interpretation on previously described events, typically used to facilitate a dramatic plot shift or account for an inconsistency. Over in Wikipedia, it actually stands for retroactive continuity, colloquially known as retcon. It is the literary device in fictional storytelling whereby facts and events established through the narrative are adjusted, ignored, supplemented, contradicted by a subsequently published work that recontextualizes or breaks continuity with the former. So that's the definition of retcon. It's a retroactive continuity. This is on Wikipedia. So this term originated in the comic book sphere, and there's various motivations for, it says right here, for applying a retroactive continuity to accommodate desired aspects of sequels or derivative works, which would otherwise be ruled out, to respond to negative fan reception of previous stories, okay, to correct and overcome errors or problems identified in the prior work since its publication, to change or clarify how the prior work should be interpreted. Okay, going down to different types of retcons. There's an addition retcon. Retcons sometimes do not contradict previously established facts, but instead fill in missing background details, usually to support current plot points. So referring to retroactive continuity in the sense as purely additive process that did not undo any previous work. So there's different examples that they give. I'm going to put all these links. Remember, we do still have a show notes page over at our Telegram channel at JawsOB. The show notes are still going to be posted there, so I'm going to toss all of these links. I know I'm going to be spitting them out at rapid fire because we have a lot of information to go through here. But what I want to do is I want to give these links out so you can also go and research for yourself exactly how important the term retcon is and how it was used in the past. And we're going to show how it was actually used in the Jaws movies of the past and how what exactly is Jaws Retcon 2027, which is the movement we have going forward. But they give some examples. In The Godfather Part 2, the character Frank Pantangeli is introduced as an old friend of the family though he is not referenced in the first film. Similarly, Don Antobello is one of the old-time Dons, though he is not mentioned until The Godfather Part 3. So neither edition affects the plot line of the film. There's also alterations. Retcons sometimes add information that seemingly contradicts previous information. This frequently takes the form of a character who is shown to have died, but is later revealed to have somehow lived or survived. This is common practice in horror films, which may end with the death of a monster that goes on to appear in one or more sequels. We can give lots of examples of that. We can from Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween, all that stuff. That's more of a alteration retcon when they have these derivative sequels. Subtraction. Unpopular stories are sometimes later ignored by publishers and effectively erased from a series continuity. Later stories may contradict the previous ones or explicitly establish that they never happened. Later stories may contradict the previous ones or explicitly establish that they never happened. So this is very important. We are going to talk about this, the term of subtraction, with retconning that was used in Jaws movies of the past. And this is very important. So we're going to talk about all of that. And they give some examples here about Terminator Dark Fate, subtractive retconning, which is a sequel to the first two Terminator films and ignores the events of the other film in the franchise. Halloween 2018, which is a sequel to only the original film and disregards all the other sequels. So that this is not a new concept, retconning. This has been around for a while, and it's just that we need to establish that that is an actual industry term, and it is something that has seriously stood out with me as we go forward, and how the expanded Jaws universe is going to actually move forward into the next 50 years, where you have Jaws, and what will that do for the Jaws legacy? So that is what retconning is. So that's what retconning is, and that we have to keep that term in mind, because that is what we're going to be basing our entire next 2 years on as we head into 2027 here at the Jaws Obsession with Jaws Retcon 2027. Just to give a little bit of detail and a little bit of weight of the moment that we're at. I just got back from Los Angeles. It was quite the experience. I was able to take Tatiana and my two daughters. They're 12 and 9, and show them the history of Hollywood. We went through all the historical sites. From some famous locations where movies were filmed, like the Griffith Observatory, and then we went to obviously Hollywood Boulevard. But we went to some museums to see artifacts and costumes and things from the Hollywood history. Universal Studios, we were there. It was very important that I felt that it was a pilgrimage in a way, that the Academy of Motion Pictures and the museum there was able to hold this Jaws exhibition. And there was walked in, and to go there first, when you walk in, it's just an amazing experience. You walk into this museum and you work your way through the levels, level 1, level 2, and the Jaws exhibit is on the entire 3rd floor. And you go, and as you move through the levels, you see things like we saw the actual ruby slippers from Wizard of Oz that with Judy Garland's name handwritten on the inside, Judy Garland. And it was just the history is just, it's just very, the energy and the history it's all there. It's very exciting to be there in that moment and see some of the artifacts, the actual, maybe some props that were used in Alien, the werewolf from American Werewolf in London. We saw handwritten script pages by Quentin Tarantino from Pulp Fiction. The history is just amazing. And then you move up into the 3rd floor. We go into the Jaws exhibit. And right as you go in there, you're met with just a sensory overload. You're inside the movie. They actually have the original titles on the wall there, so you're underwater. The music's playing. The John Williams score hits you, and then you move into the main room. And one of the first things that you come up to see, actually see the buoy for that's the Chrissy Watkins buoy, the red number 8 buoy that was used for filming. And you see the autograph Susan Backlini. It says, "Come on in the water," and it says Susan Backlini. So she autographed that. As she's the actress, the stunt woman actress that played Chrissy, and the energy is there. She's no longer with us. She has since passed on, but there she is, and there is the buoy, and you're just hit with this moment that you are actually you are seeing the history of it all. 50 years ago, that these people came together to do some amazing things. And my congratulations to not only director Steven Spielberg, Michelle He, who was the curator and the organizer of the exhibition, but the Academy Museum, and also Chris Kiska, that he was able to donate so much of his collection to the museum. And a lot of the collection actually came from Steven Spielberg as well. So it's really amazing how involved he is in not only collecting Jaws memorabilia, but also in having a hand in this museum. You know, if you see some of the pictures, you see the picket fences and all that Jaws imagery that we talked about in past episodes. They're all there, and there was a great little space where you could put your hand. My daughter put her hand. Stasia was able to do a Chrissy hand pose and all that. We took a photo there. The original sign, one of the original, the no swimming beach closed by order of Amity PD, signed by Steven Spielberg. All of these things were there. We saw the Oscar, the actual Oscar that Verna Fields won. Her editing machine was there. This nice display to Verna Fields. It was like everybody that had a contribution from Joe Alves, Carl Gottlieb's typewriter was there, and things that he was working on set. It was all just so amazing to go through the rooms. And you move through, you see the jaws of the shark. We saw the original Quint jacket, okay, the M51 field jacket that we've talked about so much on the Jaws obsession here. I was starstruck. I was awestruck to go through this museum. The badge that Chief Brody wore, the Hooper bag, the bag that Hooper used when he first arrives on set. It's all right there for you to see and to take in, and it's just an amazing exhibit. Then you move over to another room and you have the Orca setup. So you have the original, the actual original letters that were on the back of Orca 1, which was the hero boat, as it's on the back of almost a stage that is made to look like the Orca in a way, a larger version of the Orca, where then you have the original fighting chair, the Rockaway fighting chair, the actual one that Robert Shaw sat in is right there. 2 of the 3 Greener harpoon rifles. One is a complete set that is there, and then one that is all put together that is actually owned by Steven Spielberg, and that was there. So you had two there. We saw that there was a famous auction that just happened. The 3rd one that was on set actually went off to auction and recently in Hollywood there. A Narragansett beer can from the set, unopened, under glass. It's so indicative of what Jaws represents, is that Jaws is that it's the working class version of a Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you would have the golden idol that is under glass, if you were to have a Raiders of the Lost Ark exhibit. But here we have the beer can, an unopened from the set, uncrushed beer can. And I just thought that was fantastic. Little touches like that were all peppered around some of these things. The hero Quint on the pulpit shot that is obvious. That is the emblem that was used to create the front of the Book of Quint. That is given its own little wall and you actually see hand scribbled notes, the handwriting of Steven Spielberg, personal notes that he had about his idea coming up with that shot, how to execute it. It's all framed right there. Yes, I did scan each and every one of those so I could analyze them on the plane home, zoom in and try to figure out every word and everything that's going on. It's just, there's so much to see. There's so much to research on, and to have it all in one place. And as you're moving through, they have images of Jaws projected on the walls. Parts of Jaws that you can actually sit there and watch some of the sequences as you see the original item. You then can turn around and see, or look up and you see the scene on the wall. It was wonderfully designed, wonderfully put together. the Orca setup, the interior of the Orca. This was almost the heart, the center. Now, we've seen Steven Spielberg talk about is his favorite scene when they compare the scars and the Indianapolis sequence. That's his favorite part in Jaws. He admitted that, and we saw that in one of the prior episodes. And so this is a little area where you actually can sit in a mock booth of the Orca and you can watch the entire Indianapolis speech on a loop over and over again underneath the light, the original hanging light from the Orca that's there. And they have that in glass hanging above you. So it's that memory of the moment there. And on the side was a description. It was a wonderful description on the side with that gave credit to Howard Sackler, the screenwriter that was brought in by Richard Zanuck and teamed up with Steven Spielberg. And he's the one that Steven Spielberg gives credit to. He's the one that brought in the Indianapolis sequence and first mentioned it, the shorter version, before it went to Milius and before it went on to set and then was brought down by Robert Shaw. So it was great to see Howard Sackler's name involved in the history of it all. Then you moved on to they had the cage there, the cage that was all bent out of shape that was used during the LA sequence, the Los Angeles sequence in the tank with the shark and Hooper ramming Hooper, the underwater sequences. It's just, you go through the entire movie of Jaws, and it's just, to take it all in is just quite the event. And I just wanted to, I was so thankful to be there and to see that. As you go towards the end, you then have this miniature display of Bruce, and that you can work the levers and you can move Bruce around and you can see the animatronics, how it was used, that these, instead of hydraulics, you actually have hand levers here. So you actually can work and control the mouth and the tail and all that. And then then you move into this outer room with all sorts of Jaws memorabilia from the years. You have all excellent, just amazing posters from around the world, all the different countries, the Jaws posters that are on the wall. You have different memorabilia that shows the that how Jaws was used, from backpacks to pinball machines, all sorts of things to just take in. And then as you step out, you then move to the outer doors and you go into the lobby, which hanging from the ceiling right there, right at eye level, is Bruce, the last of the fiberglass mold that was taken from the original mold of the 25-foot Bruce shark, and that was restored by all of those wonderful people over in LA. And then it is now permanently part of this museum. And it's just so fitting that now, after you move out, you walk into what you see is your eye level with the 25-foot shark, and who never has looked better. It's amazing to be there, and you're on the escalator. You take the escalator down and you go right underneath the shark. It's just wonderful thing. So I made a post about that, and placed it to Instagram to show just a taste of what I've just talked about, and that has gotten 33,400 views. That we are a lot of interaction. That look at the amount of weight that such a historic moment and all of the items bring together. That we can have over 33,000 views on this post shows you that we have a tight community here. That there's a lot of eyes on the prize here, which is very exciting. It's very exciting to see that Jaws is historic. And that this exhibition was almost fuel for this fire of what I'm going to get into here with this Jaws Retcon 2027. Perfect to be going into to see that as we move into episode 100, because this episode 100 has to be another flag in the ground moment. Has to be that we are defining where we are and where we need to go. And I just feel so strongly about this and so positively charged up after that, seeing that museum exhibit. And I can't say enough that if you can get out to Los Angeles, if you can go there as a Jaws fan or as just a fan of movie history by July, because this exhibit only goes till July. I don't believe there are any plans for a traveling exhibition. That these items were donated from very high profile people, but also the security of these items was top notch. We're talking, lasers in the ceilings and all sorts of things. So it's very safe at the Academy Museum. I don't know if they could guarantee security on a traveling road show. So that's probably might be a hang up. Who knows? But for myself, to be able to see the exhibit that was placed on Martha's Vineyard at the museum in Martha's Vineyard in the summertime, back in the 50th anniversary of Jaws, when we were there for the Amity Week 2025, and then to see this exhibit, the Jaws energy has never been higher. Two quotes jumped out at me recently. One by the famous producer Rick Rubin, music producer Rick Rubin, and the other by director Steven Spielberg. On page 146 of The Creative Act with Rick Rubin, he writes, sometimes the purpose of a seed is to propel us in a completely new direction. Along the way, it may morph into something hardly resembling its original form and become our finest work yet. At this point in time, it's helpful to think of the work as bigger than us, to cultivate a sense of awe and wonder at what's possible, and recognize that this productivity is not generated by our hand alone. Then the immortal sentence, it writes, and he gives it its own page, the work reveals itself as you go. The work reveals itself as you go. There's seeds of creativity that sometimes propel us in completely new directions, and that work reveals itself as you go. And that is what has happened here with not just the Book of Quint, but the Jaws obsession. This new work revealed itself to me. And I realized that it's not by my own hand. It was from it was from a spiritual connection in a way where the creative act is alone is what happens, is that when you are when you're involved in something so deeply, things form and come out. And it's up to us to recognize that and act on those, because that is just the universe's way of saying, this story needs to be told. And I wanted to play a quick video with Rick Rubin when he was on a podcast here.
We really are talking about magic. We're talking about like the universe conspiring on our behalf if we let it. And to be in this flow of catching these waves that anyone can catch. If you're trying to catch it, you're open to it, you see it coming, you take off on every chance you get, and sometimes the ride happens, and it's remarkable. It's remarkable how it happens. And it doesn't come from, it's not preconceived, it's not an idea, it's through the doing. It's things that want to be, that the universe wants to happen now, comes through us. And if we don't do it, maybe someone else will do it. Have you ever had that experience where you have an idea for something and you don't do it, and then 6 months later you see that someone else has done it? It's not because they took your idea. It's that it's time for that.
It's through the doing that these things happen. That is so important. And that's Rick Rubin on the Joe Rogan podcast from 3 years ago. And this is Rick Rubin, who has produced many different episodes, or many different albums with many different artists. He produced records for acts, as a variety of acts, such as Adelaide, Lady Gaga, Metallica, Slayer, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Rage Against the Machine, all the way to Johnny Cash. And he was a founder of Def Jam Recordings. And he produced albums for LL Cool J, the Beastie Boys, Run DMC. What he brings to the table is not specifically music oriented. It's the creative act of building and bringing something into reality that is inspired by creativity. And what he was talking about there is that it's the artist that goes into the studio and paints the picture and continues to work on it, and then that art reveals itself to the artist or the musician. The song might not be fully formed, but they go in with an idea, and by working that out that's when the magic happens. The work reveals itself as you go, and by doing, that's when it actually comes into reality. And that these ideas are all around, that the universe has these ideas and it throws them at you, And it's up to us to recognize them and act on them, because if we don't, someone else will. And that's what's very important here is what and that taught me something. This taught me something that if you do not go about this, if you just let Jaws and if we can bring that into the context of Jaws, and as Jaws is as it is, if you just let it be, eventually an idea is going to come around where a producer might say, let's do Jaws 5. It might be 10 years from now, it might be 15 years from now, it might be a long time from now, but those ideas will come into reality if you let them, if you just don't grasp them when they're there. And here at the Jaws Obsession, that I just wanted to earn your trust in that, to trust me with a prequel to Jaws, but for the next step, that to take that trust and to make sure that I believe that I have the ability to do what is right for Jaws at this time. And that is what I strongly feel, is that through the Jaws Obsession, through 100 episodes, the meticulous research, the intensity that went into this, you can listen to any of these episodes. You can listen, the average episode length of the Jaws Obsession is it's over an hour long. And so you can listen to 100 plus hours of the Jaws Obsession. You can listen for a whole week straight, for over 5 days, and you can hear all. You still won't get through it all, and this is straight research into not just the movie Jaws, but the fans around Jaws and all of the aura that is Jaws. So amazing to see. And that's what happened, is now a new story was born through all of this. I can go back to the specific episode that really triggered it. And then other subsequent episodes have brought out more. And it's just exciting to see that happen. And we are at a really interesting time. And that's where the Jaws Retcon 2027 movement has been born, was through the first 100 episodes of the Jaws Obsession and the writing and research of the Book of Quint. So with Rick Rubin, that quote stood out of me. The work reveals itself as you go. Very interesting. And so let's keep that in mind. And the next quote here is by Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg said, "I wasn't happy with the sequel, and I realized I had let a franchise go that I could have made a good contribution to." That quote, when I came across that's from a 2011 interview with Ain't It Cool News, that when Steven Spielberg said those words in referencing the Jaws sequels, I wasn't happy with the sequel, and I realized I had let a franchise go that I could have made a good contribution to. I realized there was a lot of hurt in that statement. We're going to get into that a little bit later here, about Steven Spielberg's reaction towards the sequels to Jaws. But one thing in that quote there, I wasn't happy with the sequel, and I realized I had let a franchise go that I could have made a good contribution to. When I was at the museum, that quote stood out. Steven Spielberg has Jaws is one of the greatest achievements of his time, of his career, in that it was the most stress, it was the hardest production to get through, everything was on the line. It was a make it or break it moment, and he survived that, but not without the mental abuse, the scars that were inside. He's talked about the PTSD, that his career almost tanked, that there were people hoping and banking that Jaws failed just so they could say, "I told you so," that there were executives that did not have faith in him, and that he had to really push forward, and some people stuck their neck out for him. Sid Sheinberg, Richard Zanuck, and David Brown, and that Spielberg not only was able to bring the ship home, but it turned out to be the most successful film of all time up to that year in 1975. So now that we got those quotes out of the way, where are we at? The Book of Quint is a bestseller. We have a prequel to Jaws that is a bona fide bestseller, audible bestseller, showing that it has been on the bestseller list, top 100 in the world for historical thrillers as an audiobook for this entire year. We've been impossible to keep books in stock, Edgartown Books has about 20 left, and we have to look at getting more for them by this summer. That the Book of Quint, it's hard to keep the book in stock. There's a lot of support and there's a lot of love for the Book of Quint, and the passion in that book is, and the heart behind it is what Jaws needed for 2025. And as I've been doing here with these EJU episodes, as you've seen with the expanded Jaws universe episodes, we've been going minute by minute through Jaws. We've established that this new expanded Jaws universe has been formed. And I've said this before on the podcast, but I'm going to put it up right now, that you have the Book of Quint, you have Jaws, and then you have Jaws 2. Because the Book of Quint uses elements and things that Jaws 2 were able to establish. Landmarks like Cable Junction are mentioned in the Book of Quint. And it's important. So that is what right now the expanded Jaws universe has. The Book of Quint, Jaws, and Jaws 2. But our work is not done. And that's not done at all because of those two haphazard sequels, Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge. Okay, we have to talk about these because we have to get this out. We have to just get this out on the table, and we have to explain what we need to do going forward. Because together with Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge, they successfully retcon Jaws. We talked about the term retcon, retroactive continuity. They erase or change the details of Jaws. Jaws 3 does it first, and then Jaws the Revenge comes in to retcon Jaws 3, and it basically makes it even more convoluted. So what these two movies did was they led to the desecration and the destruction of the legacy of Jaws. That Jaws was a punchline throughout the 80s about endless sequels and all of that. The idea of a sequel is to exploit the original. Okay, the idea of a sequel is to exploit the original film, unless it is part of an overall story. All right, as you have parts. So Godfather Part 1 and Godfather Part 2 was an overall story. And Godfather Part 3 was more of a sequel. It wasn't part of the original story. It was kind of forced in there. So that's why it wasn't as well received as 1 and 2, Parts 1 and 2. During the 70s, and studios pressured in the 80s to make derivative sequels for the next 40 years. So what was happening was they were just taking events from the first movie or the second movie, and then they were making a derivative sequel. It really wasn't part of an overall preconceived story, such as The Lord of the Rings, or you have the Star Wars films, that the original trilogy there, that it was an overall story that was happening. So they didn't feel like sequels. They felt like they were adding more to the story. So then you could go back and watch the original film with better context, better information, better character development, and then you can enjoy those original movies better because you have an overall arcing theme, a story. And that's what I truly believed that Jaws lacked, in that there wasn't obviously that each production had its own problems. Even in Jaws 2, the screenplay was fouled up. They had to fire the director. We talked about the idea that Steven Spielberg wanted to have a Jaws prequel as Jaws 2. He pitched that back in over the 4th of July weekend, 1977, when they fired the first director, John Hancock, from Jaws 2, but the producers and Sid Sheinberg wanted to continue on with Monster Shark. Steven Spielberg did not want to do that, so he dropped out, and then we had what is historically Jaws 2. But Jaws 2 has the performance by Roy Scheider, and Roy Scheider's performance there has to be some close respect that we give to the actor Roy Scheider. He didn't want to do the movie, but he still was there. Also, Carl Gottlieb came back, so there was, and then John Williams' score ties the movie together, makes Jaws 2 palatable. And that's why people say, if you're going to have one of the of all the sequels, what's your favorite sequel? People say it's Jaws 2 because there's at least there's more to the story, more to the character development that happens. But let's get into that. Let's move on. Let's get into explain Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge, Jaws 4. How do they retcon and invalidate Jaws? Let's get into that right now because it's very important. We have to talk about this. We're not going to go through all the movie, but I want to show parts of Jaws 3 and Jaws the Revenge and explain exactly why these are problem movies and why they do a disservice to Jaws. In Jaws 3, we take over here with we're at SeaWorld. And I want to pause it right here, is that we have Dennis Quaid is playing Michael Brody, okay? Dennis Quaid was born in 1954, and Jaws 3D, Jaws 3 takes place in 1983. It makes Dennis Quaid 29 years old when he filmed this, or when we're looking at this. If we're going to take his real age, it never really establishes his age. So we're looking at he's in his late 20s. If you want to pretend he's younger, maybe 25 or 26. If you go back to our episode, Jaws Obsession, episode 69, The Brody Boys, that we established the ages of Sean and Michael Brody in 1974 when Jaws takes place. And we had Michael Brody more of around the 13, 14 area, and we had Sean Brody at the 6 and 7 area, okay? And that's back on episode 69, The Brody Boys. That was back in 2023. So let's come to this now. As we see in Jaws 3D, we have a 29-year-old Dennis Quaid, almost 30 years old. So automatically, this takes place 9 years after Jaws. This takes place 9 years after Jaws. So we're talking from 74 to 83. That would make a 13, 14-year-old Michael Brody would have to be 22 to 23 years old at the most. And Dennis Quaid is way older than that right here. But even say, okay, let's say Dennis Quaid's the lead welder at SeaWorld at 23 years old. So Michael Brody's doing all right there. But then as Sean Brody is introduced in the movie, so Sean Brody comes in, played by John Putch. Bess Armstrong plays Dr. Catherine Morgan. Dennis Quaid's playing Mike Brody. So that's the younger brother here. Now listen to this quote here.
How'd you do in your finals?
Great. A gentleman's C and incomplete, but I aced physics.
A real Einstein. Glad you're here.
All right. How did you do on your finals? So now we have Sean Brody coming in 1983 as he's either just graduated college or he's out of his first year of college. If you have a 6 and 7-year-old Sean Brody in 1974, 9 years later, he's supposed to be 15 to 16 years old. Clearly, he's older. So what we've effectively done, what they effectively did, Universal Studios, Universal Pictures, and Jaws 3D, what that effectively does now is that retcons Jaws. Retroactive continuity. It changes the continuity of Jaws and Jaws 2. So if you look in the Age of the Brody Boys in episode 69, we went into Jaws 2, and we show how the actors' ages in Jaws 2 were very, very similar, that they actually maintained continuity. They did cast that Michael Brody is 3 years later. Jaws 2 takes place in 1977. We know that from proof that we see on screen there, and that Michael Brody would have been 17 years old. 16 going on 17. He's still in high school. He's got the summer job. It adds up, is that those characters, those actors do look like they could be a 9, 10-year-old Sean Brody and a 16, 17-year-old Michael Brody. But then you come into Jaws 3 and you have a 29-year-old Dennis Quaid, and you have a Sean Brody that is talking about going to college when he really should still be in high school. Retcon Jaws. So that's what Jaws 3 does. That simple little inaccuracy, that simple little, forget about going into the movie and a 35-foot shark and SeaWorld and just a lot of the nonsense that happens in Jaws 3. It just makes it into a laughing stock, obviously, that people laughed at that. And that I saw this when I was a child, when I was a kid. This was on HBO back in the early 80s or mid 80s. And I just remember watching it and fascinated as a kid. But as you get older, you realize just what a disservice it did, that this was a derivative sequel, which is what I was talking about earlier, is that these studios were aggressively pushing just to make a buck, to make a good box office. We have a concept. We have a Jaws. We have Monster Shark movie. Let's get Monster Shark 3, no matter how ridiculous it is, even though it does a disservice to the original film. And this is what happened. But that little detail right there means that effectively, if you like or want to recognize Jaws 3 as canon to Jaws, you are now retconning Jaws. okay? It can't be canon to the Jaws universe because the age has changed. So with that, we have to remove Jaws 3 from the equation. Very, very interesting, very simple, very straightforward, that we need age specific. We need to get our dates right. That's what we have to do. And that's where the research and that comes in, is that this story just wouldn't have worked with an early 20s Mike Brody and a high school Sean Brody. Then you couldn't have it at SeaWorld, I guess. So they had to change these ages to make it work. Then you basically fell out of continuity. You retroactively changed Jaws. Retcon. So Jaws 3, retcon, Jaws. Now we have to move to Jaws the Revenge. We're not going to get into a Jaws the Revenge bashing fest. That could take us 2 hours on itself. What we're going to do is we're going to drill down on some details here. But Jaws the Revenge is just terrible. It's an example that's of what a really bad movie can be. That they needed a hit, and Sid Sheinberg, the head of Universal at the time, said we need to have another Jaws movie, so they rushed it through. By the time they okayed, it was like late '86, and it was fall of '86 when they greenlit a project to try to get without a screenplay, as all the Jaws movies have done, and they give it a summer of '87 opening day. When we're talking about retconning. In many ways, Jaws the Revenge is so bad that it retcons itself over and over again. They have the different endings with Mario Van Peebles' character Jake. He dies. When I saw it at 9 years old in the movie theater, and I just remember him dying at the end. And then they refilmed some things and then released it in Europe and then for home video. And all of a sudden, Jake's alive. So they had different endings that were filmed. It was just a mess, that the shark was stabbed to death by the boat at the end of Jaws, and at the end of Jaws the Revenge, and then it decides to blow up in the home version. So it was regardless of the effects, regardless of the ridiculous roaring sounds and all of the things that they used, one of the things that was just not really well received here, obviously, they even went so far as to have a shark's point of view above the water, like a shark is swimming with its eyes above the water here, and it's going in and out. So it was one of those things where you just you had to really suspend disbelief and credibility that this movie was just absolutely just silly. It was just a silly attempt. One of the things they tried to do was they actually came back to the town of Amity. They came back to Eggertown, Martha's Vineyard, to film a lot of these sequences. The first first half hour or so of Jaws the Revenge is filmed on Martha's Vineyard. And produced and directed by Joseph Sargent. Now, Joseph Sargent was actually a really good director. He wasn't any slouch. The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I mean, we're talking, that's a great movie, a great Robert Shaw role. If you haven't seen that movie, it's just an excellent movie. Walter Matthau versus Robert Shaw. It's just unbelievable. And so Joseph Sargent was a very competent director. It's just, what you have here is it was rushed and it was not well thought of, and it really should never have been. It was just a pure money grab. But what I wanted to focus on here, there's a Screen Rant article over here where the letter Steven Spielberg sent to Jaws the Revenge's director, Joseph Sargent. So this is in an article by Padraig Cotter, published May 8th, 2022. We have to give Steven Spielberg some credit here. He's been publicly quiet on really bashing the sequels. He has really kept his opinions privately, but his actions speak louder than words when dealing with the sequels. We're going to get into that. But these are some of the very few comments that he's made. I've tried to data mine in order to present to you here and exactly paint a picture of how Steven Spielberg feels about these sequels. And this was in an article. This was in the LA Times back in, from an article that was called Jaws 4, The Smell of Money, from February 8th, 1987 by Donna Rosenthal. Can Universal smell money the way the shark smells blood? What else would lure the studio back to the potentially troubled waters of this winter rebound resort to recreate Amity, New York? And that they made a mistake. It's Amity, Massachusetts. For Jaws the Revenge, the fourth thriller in the saga of the world's hungriest great white shark. The other three have grossed $382.5 million domestically at the box office. What else would motivate Universal executives to compress the usual time it takes to develop a major film from idea to production, about 2 years, into a frantic 9 months, aiming for a July 3 release date? So already, even in February, before July of 87, February of 87, they were already talking about how this thing is going to really bomb, and that they compressed a usually 2-year production from idea to production into a frantic 9 months. Joseph Sargent, the producer-director, who called the production a ticking bomb waiting to go off. Meeting Sheinberg's July 3rd deadline is surely to, quote, drive everybody mad. There was a talk of a Jaws spoof set in Malibu that had been in development under Frank Price, then chairman of the Motion Picture Group, who departed the studio in September. For a considerable time, I believed we should do a good Jaws movie. He called Jaws 3D, produced by Alan Landsberg Productions but distributed by Universal, quote, a pretty bad movie. The people running Universal Motion Pictures at the time couldn't get the Jaws notion off the ground. The only way to get another Jaws done was to take direct responsibility myself. I got the kind of people I knew would work fast and well with the Jaws premise. It was done in a very unconventional manner. An experienced observer, Steven Spielberg, sent this note to Sargent after reading the script for Jaws: The Revenge. This was published in the LA Times back in 1987. So that's how this came into the Screen Rant article. The letter reads as this. This is from Steven Spielberg. Quote, like the Vietnam vet, I came home to and managed never to think about the year 1974 until I started reading Jaws: The Revenge. I got to page 18 and found myself holding that service revolver and discharging it until empty into the Atlantic Ocean. I just couldn't go on reading because it brought back so many memories. Good luck, Joseph Sargent. Bring a lot of Joseph Conrad to read while you're waiting for the next shoot. Call home often to talk to people you love. With tremendous sympathy and 2 winks of my right eye, signed Steve. And I want to go to the Jaws: The Revenge screenplay. He said Steven Spielberg got to page 18, okay, in this letter. I got to page 18. So I did some I read through the first section of the Jaws: Revenge screenplay. And in around page 18, it talks of a scene right there. Okay, so we know that this is the crazy part of Jaws: The Revenge, is that they tried to get Roy Scheider back to play Brody. And Roy Scheider said, the only way I'll do it is that if you kill me in the first part. So they agreed. They said, yes, we could do that. But Roy wanted way too much money. But they were going to have Roy Scheider get killed by the shark on that boat by reaching over the side and all that stuff that happens with Sean Brody. Roy Scheider said, I'm not going to do it. Didn't commit to it. They ended up making it Sean Brody. So what happens is that you go through the screenplay and Sean Brody gets killed. Michael Brody returns. Now, granted, Michael is now a marine biologist. He's no longer a welder, okay, or an underwater welder and head of facilities over at SeaWorld. He's now a marine biologist. So a lot of people don't know that Universal Studios actually wanted to retcon Jaws 3 with Jaws: The Revenge. And it says right here, it says the fourth and final, switching back to Wikipedia here, it says Jaws: The Revenge, the fourth and final film, Jaws: The Revenge, sees the storyline returning to Amity Island, but ignores all plot elements introduced in Jaws 3D. No mention is made to Michael's girlfriend from the previous film, Dr. Catherine Morgan, or his career change from an engineer at SeaWorld to a marine biologist. In fact, one of the Universal Studios press releases for Jaws: The Revenge omits Jaws 3D entirely by referring to Jaws: The Revenge as, quote, third film of the remarkable Jaws trilogy. So even in their press release material, Universal Studios retconned Jaws 3 by making Jaws: The Revenge. They wanted to say that it was Jaws, Jaws 2, and Jaws: The Revenge. But what they're doing is that they're just convoluting the problem in that it's just a mess of a film, and it's not successful at doing that because that not only are, in my estimation, are the kids' ages still not handled right, because in 1987 or in 86, wherever Jaws: The Revenge would have taken place, we're talking about 12 years after Jaws. So if Sean Brody is 6'7", he's supposed to be 18, 19 in Jaws: The Revenge, and yet he's supposedly running the shop as an experienced deputy in Amity Island. And he just doesn't look like he would be 18 or 19 doing that. He would be more in his early 20s, and then Michael is off doing his marine biology stuff. So they still don't really, and also they never cover some of the inconsistencies, what life would have been like after the events of Jaws 2. They don't even talk about really Jaws 2. They talk about just the one shark. It seems like they almost talk about just that shark. They talk about just Jaws as itself. They don't even really mention Jaws 2. So it looks like they're even trying to retcon Jaws 2 in the screenplay. But that was actually an active in the press releases back in 1987. They said that it's the third film of the remarkable Jaws trilogy. So they were already kicking Jaws 3D to the curb even back then. And they thought that this was going to reset things. So going back to Spielberg's letter, talking about that page 18, if you go down, you walk down to after Sean Brody is killed by the shark, and Michael visits his mom. So Ellen Brody goes to the funeral, and it says, "Interior Brody House dining room night from Jaws. Sean, a small boy, and Martin are here at the table. Martin is lost in thought, reflecting on his dilemma about the appearance of the great white shark in Amity and the refusal of the town fathers to shut down the beaches. Sean imitates his father's every move, mimicking him in every way. Then it has a minister voiceover. To everything there is a season and time and every purpose under the heaven." So you have the minister talking over Sean's casket, but you're cutting into scenes from Jaws, actual footage of Jay Mello playing Sean Brody with Roy Scheider at the dining room table. That great scene that we all loved from Jaws is now being recycled, reused. Okay, remember, this is the page 18 that Spielberg is talking about, that he actually closed the screenplay and could not continue. So the cuts to Cemetery Day. Ellen is smiling, her expression reflecting her memory of her son and her husband. Sean is being buried. The minister is conducting the gravesite services. Then it cuts to back to Brody House dining room night from Jaws. Martin and Sean are still at the table. So it has that whole thing. But then it goes to, after the cemetery, it goes to Averill Bay night. The water laps gently against the shore. A person's legs are seen walking into it. Ellen is revealed walking slowly, deliberately out into the cold water. Her expression is set with sad determination, as though she's going to keep on walking until the water swallows her up. Finally, she stops and slowly raises her right hand. It holds Sean's service revolver. She points it towards the water in front of her, and one by one, coldly, methodically fires all 6 rounds into the bay. This is a scene that was never filmed. It's not in Jaws: The Revenge, but this is the point where Spielberg closed the screenplay and said, "I just can't finish it," and wrote that letter to Joseph Sargent. "Good luck. I got to page 18 and found myself holding that service revolver and discharging it until empty into the Atlantic Ocean. I just couldn't go on reading because it brought back so many memories." That's Spielberg. When he was saying that, that was Steven Spielberg being very, very kind, but he knew, I want to say, in my heart of hearts, not only did he know that the screenplay was bad, okay, because it doesn't take you very long to recognize that this screenplay is not good, that it's melodramatic, it's forced. The shark hunting down Sean Brody is just but it's also doing a disservice to his original Jaws, his characters. One of the things that Spielberg really did not like was the recycling of footage of Jaws into this movie. Now, I'm going to give you a little backstory here. There was a dispute, okay, that happened back in the 70s in an episode, season 1, episode 14 of The Incredible Hulk. Universal Studios, famously, the series Incredible Hulk with Bill Bixby, Lou Ferrigno, the TV show. That was actually filmed on Universal Studios backlot. A lot of those episodes were there. In season 1, episode 14, they used footage from Duel. They took clippings of Duel. They cut scenes of Duel and the red Plymouth Valiant. There's a video here showing some of the segments that were Film IT VFX Studios official. They have I'm going to put this link into the show notes as well, so you actually can see where they use the same temperature gauges from this Plymouth Valiant, the cutaways that Spielberg would have used, that he would have had filmed for his movie Duel, they went back into the archive footage and they used that in order to highlight this little bit of a scene from season 1, episode 14 of The Incredible Hulk. And that we have, so you can actually see right here, even this part right here, he's highlighted. There's the truck. This is the same shot here. Okay, there's the Plymouth Valiant. There's the where David Banner's driving a red Plymouth Valiant, and there's a truck chasing him. And so they use this sequence in order to, they basically cut out the Dennis Weaver segments, and they took the footage in order to show these two guys chasing David Banner before he hulks out and saves the day there. So that right there was one of those ones. You can go to our show link. I'll put that video up there. Here's another article here. The entire finale of Duel was lifted as stock footage for use in the Incredible Hulk TV series 1978, which prompted Spielberg to change his contract. The Incredible Hulk used 10 to 12 minutes of Duel footage, including one 8-minute sequence. It used approximately 218 cuts of our film. The material was instantly recognizable, including the whole climax of our picture, according to Duel's producer George Eckstein in a New York Times article first published in 1978. Could not fight the use of Duel segments on legal grounds. It did lead Spielberg to change his contract with Universal so that no one can cannibalize my films and regurgitate them into some other show. I'd hate to see the mothership from Close Encounters land on Laverne and Shirley 5 years from now. That was a quote from Steven Spielberg. He changed his contract so that everything he has to be by his permission afterwards. And that was back in 1978. So what it looks like here is that for Jaws footage to be used for flashback sequences in Jaws the Revenge, when he was reading this, he learned about how they were going to use it. And after reading the segment that was going to be Sean Brody's funeral intercut with his footage of Jay Mello as Sean Brody with Roy Scheider at the dinner table, he closed the script and then wrote that letter to Joseph Sargent. All right, so let's watch this funeral sequence here. You see some of the people here. You see Mr. Posner. You see some of the selectmen that were from the original Jaws in the crowd here as they're mourning over Sean's casket here at a cemetery they constructed. But look, see, you have the sepia-tone cutbacks of the stock footage from Jaws. Now, Spielberg's contract from the Duel fiasco with the Incredible Hulk says that they cannot use his footage. All his contracts said that, but here, either he had to give his permission or maybe it was grandfathered in. I don't know. If anybody is out there that knows the answer, that can actually tell me these things, please let me know, because that's very interesting to me. I'll put that out there. You can write to me at jawsob2025@gmail.com. That was the use of the Jaws footage in Jaws the Revenge. Was that because it was made before Spielberg had his contract changed in 1978 to say anything that he used from that point anything he made for Universal from that point forward could not be used in other productions? So that's why they were able to use Jaws? Or did he actually give his permission? Because it looks like when he read in the screenplay that they were going to cut back to Jaws, flashbacks of Jay Mello and Roy Scheider at the dinner table. From that letter, he closed the script and didn't want to read it anymore. He didn't want anything to do with it. That, to me, is very unfortunate. Very, very unfortunate. So maybe we can get the answer out there in the Jaws obsession. But that right there leads to the disastrous ending. Let's cut back. We're going to go right to the ending here before we leave Jaws the Revenge here. Let's get to this disastrous ending here. So it's so bad. You have roaring sharks jumping from the water, and they're cutting back and forth. There we have it. The shark blows up from getting rammed by a boat. And then we actually have the original footage used from the shark dying in Jaws, and it's just, they reuse the footage just like that. That right there must have really incensed Steven Spielberg. If he was mad about Duel being used in The Incredible Hulk, how does he feel about the actual intense scenes from Jaws being used in Jaws the Revenge? Not good, right? Not good. I want to go back one of the things, because let's talk Roy Scheider here. He is the face of Jaws, right? He plays our hero. He plays Chief Brody. So back in the Amity Police Department right here, let me pause it there. You have a new actress playing Polly. And what you have is you have Roy Scheider. You have a picture of Chief Brody, a publicity still, famous one from Jaws. And they have it framed hanging on the wall there. So this is the last time we actually get a mention of Chief Brody, is right here. This is it. He's been reduced to a picture on the wall. As far as the Jaws universe, the Jaws universe, if you take it at face value, Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and Jaws the Revenge, what a disservice it does to the character of Chief Brody. What a disservice it does to the Brody family, that this exploitive sequel, that what it did, and then using the reused footage. Now, yes, Roy Scheider declined to be in these movies, but that doesn't mean that you couldn't have gone on a different tangent. You couldn't have told a different story or followed something else. Instead, they just forced this through, and Chief Brody is reduced to just a picture on the wall. How insulting to the character we all love in Jaws. The worst type of retconning you can do is just say he's a picture on the wall and he had a heart attack and he died because the shark stressed him out. Absolutely a disservice to the Brody family, the characters, and the work that was done to make Jaws. So this is the last time I want to leave this image right here, because this is the last time we're ever going to see Jaws Revenge on the Jaws Obsession, because Jaws Retcon 2027 is going to remedy this. And we are not going to refer to Jaws 3D or Jaws the Revenge anymore. And I want everyone to just realize that this is one of the reasons why not only the reused footage, which is against Spielberg's wishes, but also how the disservice to Chief Brody, that this was also allowed to stay with the novelization, Jaws the Revenge by Hank Searles, that this is what it was reduced to. This character that was created by Peter Benchley and that was immortalized by Roy Scheider with Steven Spielberg directing in Jaws, now just a picture on the wall, and just a retconned backstory that he had a heart attack and he is no longer. And that's not right. And it doesn't have to be like that. Let's talk about the Steven Spielberg's reactions to the Jaws sequels and his early efforts to stand up to the studio's efforts to exploit what was a triumph in filmmaking with the original Jaws. Steven Spielberg and the crew of Jaws, Joe Alves from Verna Fields, who won an Oscar for editing, John Williams, he won an Oscar for his first original score. Remember, his first Oscar was for his arrangement for Fiddler on the Roof, but this was his first music that he wrote, and that was Jaws. So Jaws represented so much to so many people, David Brown and Richard Zanuck, that Spielberg, he was standing up for what Jaws was and what the legacy of what Jaws would be going forward. And he knew that that the sequels he just couldn't bring himself to do a fish story, as he said. That he tried. We talked about that before. We have the video that has over 100 and it's close to 150,000 views on Instagram. The little drop, the reel that I posted about Spielberg's original intent in 1977 for a Jaws 2 was a prequel idea with the USS Indianapolis with Howard Sackler. He was going to be working with Howard Sackler, and that was all there. And it just didn't happen that way. In the years over, he's been respectful. He has not reached out and came out and openly trashed or talked down on what have the missteps. And I think this was out of respect for people that were involved. We know that Carl Gottlieb had written Jaws 2 and 3. We know that he came in to rewrites of Jaws 2 in 3D. We also know that Joe Alves, the production designer, he directed Jaws 3D. So Steven Spielberg was not very keen to, I just think that he's a lot more reserved with what he says in public. Back on episode 39 of the Jaws Obsession, we had Jaws 3 People Zero. We explained what it was and how did this set the tone for the next 4 decades of the Jaws franchise. Jaws 3 People Zero was going to be a spoof movie that National Lampoons was going to do. They were going to lampoon Jaws. And the synopsis is a greedy studio executive is out to sabotage the production of Jaws 3. One night, the film's producer is eaten by a great white. In his will, Canterbury leaves his majority shares of the studio to his ex-girlfriend. Her son is then courted by the producer to write and direct Jaws 3 in hopes that he will make the worst movie of all time. During filming, the shark attacks continue. So it was going to be a comedy. It was called Jaws 3 People Zero, working out of the Jaws Unmade, the book by John LeMay that was written and published back in, I believe it's 2020. But what he does is 2020, and he goes through all of the haphazard sequels and ripoffs and Jaws-inspired derivatives like Orca or Piranha 2 that were made in the wake of Jaws, Grizzly and all that. So in his chapter 22, where he talks about Jaws 3 People Zero, on page 174, he highlights that he says that the principal photography was set to begin on October 7th, 1979. The same month, the project would end up being canceled. Supposedly, Steven Spielberg did not like the script as it made fun of him and his film. According to an interview with Maddie Simmons and IGN, Spielberg threatened to walk off the studio lot if the film was produced. Joe Alves also remarked that he did not like the script as it made fun of the arduous making of the first Jaws, which was still a sore subject for many involved. Even though $2.5 million worth of pre-production had already been spent on the picture, Universal executives shut it down shortly after Zanuck and Brown left Universal. Simmons pondered selling it to another studio, but as Universal owned the Jaws franchise, his chances of getting it made were slim. We have Steven Spielberg actively said to the studios, he threatened to walk off the studio lot if the film was produced. So this was right after Steven Spielberg, 1979, so he would have just had Close Encounters of the Third Kind would have just come out. He's on top of his game. He's ready to rock and roll. He's going to go into E.T., and he just said, you know what? I'm out of here. If you guys make that, I'm done. And he actually thwarted the Jaws comedy called Jaws 3 People Zero from ever being made, even though they already spent a couple million on pre-production. What does that tell you? That tells you that Steven Spielberg actually had his heart set on protecting Jaws, standing up for it. That's apparent from just that move right there. But what he couldn't do was stop them from making other sequels, all right? Because by 1979, by 1978, Jaws 2 already came out. So there's the Spielberg biography. I have this... the Spielberg biography, Steven Spielberg biography by Joseph McBride on page, where is it? Was it 454? Yeah, 454. What it says here is that Spielberg's motivations for making the sequel to Jurassic Park, The Lost World, were coldly pragmatic. Not only would it be guaranteed smash hit, whatever its quality, it was a film Spielberg felt a need to control because of his disdain for the tawdry sequels Universal had turned out to Jaws. He avoided making his own Jaws sequel and always would refuse to make a sequel to E.T., believing it would cheapen the original. The level of cynicism behind such projects was spoofed in the 1989 Amblin sci-fi comedy Back to the Future Part 2 by director Robert Zemeckis and executive producer Steven Spielberg, when they showed a theater marquee in 2015 featuring Jaws 19, directed by Max Spielberg, the son of Spielberg and Amy Irving. The famous marquee scene, and Michael J. Fox almost gets eaten by the holographic shark comes at him, and then he says the shark still looks fake, and it's Jaws 19. That was placed in there, and what they're saying is that was a dig by Zemeckis and Spielberg at Universal, making terrible sequels and endless sequels. And there's a level of cynicism that shows, because Spielberg felt that the Jaws brand, the Jaws franchise was ran into the ground by that time. Because remember, we're talking that would have been fresh if Back to the Future Part 2 came out in 89. By 88, that would have been in the wake of Jaws: The Revenge. Failure, massive critical hatred, just destroyed by the critics in 87. So this would have been in 88, and they were just, and Spielberg was probably at the height of his cynicism there. It says right here in the biography, though, he says, his disdain for the tawdry sequels. So Joseph McBride wrote that because he felt that in his research that Spielberg just had a disdain for the sequels. And apparently so, because of the Dig Jaws 19. But also very interesting that there would have, The Lost World was directed by Spielberg just because he felt that because of what happened to Jaws, he felt he needed to retain control. One of the few interviews where they were able to get a quote from Steven Spielberg was on Ain't It Cool News, and it's a classic interview. I will post this link as well if you want to go read the entire interview. Published on Ain't It Cool News way back in June 6, 2011, and I will put a link of this in the show notes as well. But if you scroll all the way down, they talk about the intricacies of making of Jaws and some parts about Jurassic Park as well. But if you go down here, he talks about the sequels. Interviewer asks, he says, they must have asked you to come back for Jaws 2. Steven Spielberg replies, yeah, of course, and Jaws 3. I was done. I was done with the ocean. I would have done the sequel if I hadn't had such a horrible time at sea on the first film. I would have absolutely jumped at the chance to own the sequel because I knew that when I was walking away from the sequel, I was walking away from a huge piece of my life that I helped to create. But it wasn't a hard decision to walk away from it. I just could not imagine going back to the ocean and sitting in a boat for 9 months. I just couldn't imagine it. So I was happy and relieved not to have made the movie, but also I wasn't happy with the sequel, and I realized that I had let a franchise go that I could have made a good contribution to. That's a quote that I used at the beginning, how he truly feels that he wasn't happy with the sequel, and he realized that he let a franchise go that he could have made a good contribution to. Well, the interviewer really presses here. He does a good job. He says, do you have any idea what you would have done with a sequel? Spielberg says, no idea at all, but I have a very, very good scene which I thought would have been good for a sequel someday, which I will tell you someday, but I don't want it in print. He says, every time I think of this scene, I think, could this be another Jaws movie? And I have to immediately stop myself and immediately pull myself back down to earth. So Steven Spielberg still has Jaws on his mind up to even 2011. He's thinking about a possible scene and is this another Jaws movie? But he had to let a franchise go. And I don't think that's possible. I don't think you ever let anything go, especially when something is created from the guttural creation force that Spielberg had to reach to in order to make Jaws what it was. I don't think you ever let that go. I think it stays with you forever. And in that museum at the Academy of Motion Pictures in Los Angeles, I saw Steven Spielberg, he can't let Jaws go. He really has it it's part of him. It's part of his DNA. It's part of his history. And that's where that wonderful exhibition came from. But for him to think that he had to let that franchise go, I think we can make a difference here. I think there's something else we can do. Spielberg's actions in the last few years. We know that Spielberg's actions are, I have it right here, is that it's not confirmed, but it's kind of an understood rule in the industry that Steven Spielberg gave a directive to Universal that you are not allowed to have Jaws. You're not allowed to have Jaws as part of a digipack. So where Jaws 2, 3, and Jaws the Revenge are released on their own in their own separate multi-pack, and Jaws is forever kept separate. You never see all four of them together. And that is kind of a standard that has been going on. That is something that is a directive, but I can't find any official proof to that, but all I've heard about is in these writings is that is a request from Steven Spielberg. He doesn't want Jaws to be with these sequels. He doesn't want those together ever. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. Also, what I observed is when I was at the museum, when you walked into the section that said the Jaws legacy, all the merchandising and everything the Jaws affect, right? There was no talk of the sequels, not one mention of any poster or anything or how much money it generated in the franchise itself. It was only strictly Jaws. You're not happy with those later sequels. You can't be happy with any of the sequels. And I think that we have an answer to that. It's a great error, I believe, because I'm seeing things happen now. Going forward, there's going to be a celebration, or there will be fans doing different projects, books, and documentaries regarding 40-year anniversary or 50th anniversary of these sequels. Holding the 40th anniversary of Jaws: The Revenge, 2027 will be the 40th anniversary. And it's all right. I guess you can make documentaries and explore, and everybody's free to do that. You're free to enjoy these movies. But then after that, you'll have a 50th anniversary of Jaws 2 in 2028, from 1978 to 2028. And then after that, you'll have the 50th anniversary of Jaws 3 in 2033, from 1983 to 2033, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that's the wrong way to go. I don't think Jaws... I think it's better than that. I think as a fan base, as a community, I think we can do better than that. And I think that's why the Jaws obsession was created. I think that started with the Book of Quint, with a prequel. But also to protect Jaws is to create a wider universe. It's to expand the universe. And that's what we're doing here. And that's why if you've watched this far, if you've come this far and you've listened to every episode of the Jaws obsession, and you're on this episode 100, and you've come this far, maybe you're ready to go that step further, and you can stay with us here, because it's time to take action. And as we stand together, we can restore Jaws to its proper legacy. I don't think Jaws needs to be a punchline any longer. And that is what happened, is that Jaws The Revenge solidified it with no response, with the retconning of Jaws itself, with the haphazard writing and the different conflicting timelines of the characters, and just how they handled the material. They effectively retconned Jaws with Jaws 3 and Jaws: The Revenge. And if you glorify that, if you want to say that you like Jaws: The Revenge, you like Jaws 3, I believe that it's just a disservice to Jaws as a whole. Look what happened in the span of from 1974 to 1987. 3 movies later, you are now a punchline. You became the greatest blockbuster, the first summer blockbuster. You defined the term blockbuster, and then you have a punchline. Now we're going to go into highlights of the Cisco and Ebert review of Jaws: The Revenge. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a back seat. I'm just going to let this play. We're going to play a couple of clips. Cisco and Ebert's review of Jaws: Revenge, 1987. And I want to, over the top, lay over imagery from this 50th anniversary Jaws exhibition from Los Angeles, glorifying Jaws at the Academy Museum. And I want you to realize that this is what they did. This is what they took from you, is that Universal and the powers that be at the time, they took this legacy from Steven Spielberg and they turned it into this type of review and this type of punchline. Such harsh words for a film that was derived from something so great as Jaws.
The great white shark attacks again in Jaws: The Revenge, the 4th movie, just when you thought it was safe to go back in the theater. And I'm Roger Ebert of the Chicago Sun-Times. That's one of 4 movies we'll review this week, and the question I always have is, when you see the shark at the top of the water, you only see its fin coming out, and yet when you get the shark's point of view, like we just saw,
looking at the people,
it's like its eyes are above the water too. That's a logical error among many logical errors.
You've got that right. We saw the same movie. I'm Gene Cisco, the Chicago Tribune. All the major players are gone from Jaws: The Revenge, except Roy Scheider's wife, and her name is now just a trivia question. Ellen Brody, played by Lorraine Gary, wife of the boss of MCA Universal Pictures, which happens to make the Jaws movies. 3D failed to save the series the last time out. This time an idiotic script sinks the whole show. The premise, Ellen Brody is a widow. Roy Scheider's character has died, meaning Scheider has enough sense to know when to stop bilking the public, and his wife in the film is convinced that a great white shark has a grudge against her family. Now, you can just hear those sharks talking. Here's an example of Ellen Brody's fear. The scene is very early in the picture, so veteran moviegoers should be able to figure it out. Like they say on Saturday Night Live, I hate when that happens. A dream sequence. People were groaning in the theater when that happened. I mean, I want to go up and punch a hole in the screen.
They were groaning when that happened. How about the next dream sequence? Another It's Only a Dream.
I can't stand the dream sequences. Why do they do that in the movie? If there's anything that annoys an audience, it's the dream sequence. I hate that stunt. It's old, it's cheap, it's a lousy gimmick, and I wish they would stop doing it. And then that describes a whole movie. You want to probably see what the shark looks like. They show more of it this time, and by showing more of it, actually, at the end, it sort of looks fake. As for the final confrontation, Michael Caine plays a pilot who joins Ellen Brody and one of her sons, the other's dead, and one of his friends in trying to drive the shark crazy by first making it swallow an electronic beeper box, death by noise.
Ellen, try to start the engine.
This movie is so badly made that the death of the shark isn't even set up well. There's a key shot missing so that we don't even get the whole picture. We walk out of the theater very frustrated. And that last scene is preceded by one of the most glaring errors in recent movie history. Michael Caine has been in the water, has swum to safety onto the boat, but in the very next scene, his shirt is as dry as if it had just been freshly laundered. Let's hope this is the end of the Jaws series. The first film was thrilling and well acted. The rest have been trash.
It's not even the next shot. Michael Caine actually comes over the rail out of the water,
Right.
and he's totally dry. I was
know.
sitting in the theater, and I said, his shirt is dry. You know, I got a question for you. I
Go
may
ahead.
be very badly confused here. In this movie,
Yeah.
this shark wants revenge against the Brody family.
You got it.
Yes, okay. Now, in the first movie, what happened to the shark in the first movie?
Dead.
Blown to pieces, right?
Yeah.
What happened to the shark in the second movie?
I know, dead.
Yeah, right. What happened to the shark in the
They
third
all
movie?
die.
They all die. So in that case,
They're
what
family.
shark is this?
A friend of the other shark.
Is this like a cousin, a nephew?
You got it.
A next-door neighbor?
And you know what's so great?
What?
You see, by having this gimmick, that means that even though this one dies, she still was going to stay living in that stupid town instead of moving into the Middle West where she should be, away from sharks.
So in any event, all sharks have a revenge against the
You
Brody
got it.
family. Right, okay, I got that. Okay, next movie.
Live in
Right.
Iowa is the answer.
Okay.
And there we have it. That's Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert review, the famous Siskel and Ebert review back in 1987. Through two thumbs down, just totally not only trashing Jaws Revenge, but trashing the Jaws franchise. That it just became a brand of just a complete joke, just ran into the ground. When you hear those harsh words and you see that this is now 40 years later. You know, we're going to be 40 years in 2027. That's where we come up with is that it doesn't need to be like that. We do not have to just sit back and take that. If 2026 and the years prior taught us anything, is that we can learn from our past. We have the power to stand together and do great things. We can do amazing things that we never thought we could do because we're so well connected now. We have the power of the microphone. We have the power of novels. We have the power of podcasting, videos, YouTube, that we can stand together. We can be all on the same page. We don't have to wait for studios to figure it out in a budget. And we actually can do great things. And that's where I'm officially launching on episode 100 here, is the Jaws Retcon 2027. That is our global movement, a new movement, a continued movement that was started with the Book of Quint and here on the Jaws Obsession. This is our time to restore Jaws to its proper glory, right? We all know that Jaws is good. We know that Jaws is amazing, but it's always prefaced as the jokes that come afterwards. It's always prefaced as the big warning sign. Don't do another Jaws. Don't become Jaws. If you do too much, if you're too contrived, you'll be Jaws the Revenge. And that is not what we need. We don't need to do that anymore. We actually that we've been given some signs. We've been given the creative energies have come in through the Jaws Obsession and have. I'm telling you that something really special is here, and that's why I want to say that December of this year, in December 2026, Steven Spielberg is going to turn 80 years old, and in 2027. On the 40th anniversary of Jaws Revenge, the greatest tragic sinking of his greatest cinematic feat, which was Jaws. All of us here in the Jaws obsession will give him a gift. It's going to be a time machine. This gift is going to serve as a time machine. It's going to allow Steven Spielberg to go back in time and retcon Jaws 3 and 4. He can actually eliminate that. In his mind, we're going to restore Jaws from the Left 4 Dead punchline Universal devolved it into in 1987, 40 years ago. He then can, in the theater of his mind, he will be able to expand the Jaws universe of a great story with characters that we all love. And that is so important. I just believe that we are onto something really special here. And that's what the Jaws Retcon 2027 will be. It's a movement towards the end goal of restoring the Jaws universe from a punchline, restore that legacy. And to do this, we are going to need another book. When I started this whole project back in August of 2020, I only ever felt that there was going to be one book. That's all I wanted to do. I said, just let me get this one book done and I'm done. In fact, I used to joke with Tatiana when we were driving back, when I turned to her and I said, I think I got to write a book. And I said, you know what? We're just going to get a table for the 50th anniversary of Jaws. We'll put a table out there on the island and we'll just sell some books from that table. Well, if I didn't see what happened afterwards, nobody could have predicted. Not only was the book so well received, it would sell out printing after printing all around the world, that we would end up becoming the #3 best-selling fiction novel on the island out of Edgartown Books, right next to Jaws for the 50th anniversary. That the fan base, the Jaws fans, have latched on to the Book of Quint with some declaring it as canon in these great reviews, the 5-star reviews that we see all over, from Amazon to Audible. And that Rick Rubin quote, the Rick Rubin quote from his book, "The work reveals itself as you go." The work reveals itself. That through all of these 100 episodes, through the writing, the research of the Book of Quint, and the reaction to the Book of Quint, what I saw, what I was experiencing as I was at these book signings, and over the last, from the 2024, 2025, and then again this year, meeting the fans and seeing just the heartfelt messages, people coming from all over just to tell me their experience of reading the Book of Quint. And it let me know that there was this new story. Over the last 3 years, it took hold. I was getting visions. I was seeing Jaws in a different way, and these characters were standing out. Then in last year, I started writing again, and that's what was the first writings of this new book, is that there has to be another book if we are going to expand the Jaws universe, but we're going to restore the Jaws universe to its proper legacy. Now, this new book is going to be a spin-off. It's not going to be a proper sequel, okay? It's not going to be a derivative or a direct sequel. I think that's old hat. Those really don't play well anymore in 2026. Audiences and we all can think on many different levels. We can read many different point of views, and we can actually interpret things where before, in the 70s and 80s, things were simpler back then. But now things are more complex, and I believe that a direct sequel is not what is needed. What we need is a spin-off. It's going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before. It's in the sea of derivative sequels and exploitive remakes that seem to be what is commonplace over the last 10, 15 years, maybe even 20 years. This is going to be unlike anything we've ever seen before, this new book. This story picks up on Amity in the summer of 1974, and it takes us all the way to the summer of 1984. And with this, we're going to be able to erase Jaws 3 and 4 from existence. So as you have now, we have the Book of Quint, we have Jaws, and we have Jaws 2. And that's established as part of the expanded Jaws universe that we're doing here on the Jaws Obsession. This new book knocks out 3 and 4 and takes us from Jaws through Jaws 2 into some new developments that become 1984 Amity Island. And that's where we're going to go with this. It's an extremely special story. We're going to have an expansion into the lives of some characters we see in Jaws. Many of the characters we see in Jaws don't have names, but now they will after you read this book. This new book will also echo the Book of Quint and allow you to go back to watch Jaws and Jaws 2 with new eyes and new context and appreciate some of the things that are happening there. So if we ran that campaign and Watch Jaws Again for the first time, 2025, the Book of Quint was allowing people to go back and rewatch Jaws for the first time with new context, and the performances become something very special when you know the history of it all. Well, this new book is going to allow you to do that again in a different way. It's very, very exciting. It's very unique, and it works. It all works. My personal belief in receiving this story, is Steven Spielberg needs to get the first book off the assembly line. If you can remember, we worked really hard to make sure that Ian Shaw, son of Robert Shaw, was the first one to get the Book of Quint, one of those early 300 prototypes from the first publication back in 2022. After we were allowed to go into publication by Benchley IP LLC, I was able to present a book to Ian Shaw up in Toronto. That was very important. I felt there was a very strong sense of feeling that I had to be able to get that to him, because the book was not only is it dedicated to his Robert Shaw and Mary Ure, I wanted to make sure that the Robert Shaw family, the descendants, had the first book. And that was special. That was a special time. Well, this next book is going to be the result of this movement that we have as Jaws Retcon 2027. I'm not going to release the title just yet. The title of the book is going to remain unknown until it's going to be a mystery book for now. And we're going to be underneath the banner of Jaws Retcon 2027. But what we need to do is the first book has to get to Steven Spielberg. That is one of the rules that I need to bake into this before anyone else gets the book. Maybe my mom will get an early draft because she is my biggest fan, and I have to be able to. I cannot turn down my own mother, so she's going to get an early draft. But the final version, the final draft, when the book is ready to go out, I want to make sure Steven Spielberg is the first one to get a book. How am I going to do this? I don't know. And I just keep saying that over and over again. I feel like that scene in Ghostbusters with Venkman. Do we know that scene? Can we look that up here? Ghostbusters. I don't know. I love YouTube. YouTube. People are so cool on YouTube. They actually have.
This ecto-containment system that Spengler and I have in mind is going to require a load of Brad to capitalize. Where are we going to get the money?
I don't know.
Is exactly how I feel at this moment. I just don't know. I know I don't have all the answers. But I just see it happening. I don't know how we're going to get it, but we're just going to have to do it. And I just think that by the time we move forward with this, by the time the book is written, and we'll be into 2027, I'm going to make sure that the intentions behind this book are very well known, that we are retconning 3 and 4. And I believe that this is the greatest gift that we can give as a Jaws community, as part of the Jaws obsession, is to give Spielberg on his 80th birthday, which is in December. So he'll be 80 in 2027, that we will present to him the first book and allow him to be able to go back and realize that he doesn't have to let the franchise go. In his mind, he just has to read the book, and he will be able to retcon 3 and 4 and go forward into his life, knowing that the expanded Jaws universe, there is a direction that we can go as fans, and with him as well, in restoring Jaws and the legacy of the Jaws universe. In closing, on this 100th episode, it's just, as you know, this won't be easy. That these episodes are never easy. These episodes take me days to plan, entire days of time in order to execute the recording and the editing and all of this, as you see. So, and the research is still going on to this next novel. I am currently writing, and I will be that I have to balance that out with the creation of Jaws Obsession episodes, And the schedule for the show is sporadic at best. And I'm never on a regular schedule here because I never know when I have time to actually go in to these episodes. But each new episode, I will now have a Jaws Retcon 2027 update where I am in the, I'll let you know where I'm at in the writing process. I need to put myself into a box, into a pressure situation in order to get this done. It's the only way I think I can get this result. It's not the smartest way, and it's going to be a lot of stress, but I think that's how I myself work best, is that if I do things in the public and I promise to you in my personal life or in my creative life, if I said I was going to do something, I do it. And that is what Jaws Retcon 2027 is, and episode 100 is my promise to you to get this done, is that this next story needs to happen. And it's already happening in many ways. In the Book of Quint, it deals with the historical connection we all have to Jaws. That's what the Book of Quint deals with. This next novel, it deals with the spiritual connection we all have to Jaws. That spiritual connection that brings us back to the movie every year, rewatching it over and over again. That's what this next novel is going to tackle. It's going to, that's what we're going to experience with this next book. And anyone with the special edition, if you have one of the special editions of the Book of Quint, I made sure that in the last year, in the back, the postscript that's in the back here, that is the first chapter. That's the prologue to the next novel. So for anyone with the special edition, you have a little bit of a bonus there. Is you're really ahead of this game. Is that it's already a part of the next book is already published, and that was in the Book of Quint special edition. I'm very excited to tell this story because I feel strongly about it. I feel that this story is it's not the derivative monster shark movie that the sequels all became. This is actually taking the humanity of Jaws, the people movie, as Spielberg calls it, or as on the Jaws Obsession, we called it the human movie, the human aspect of Jaws. And it's taking that and it's extending it forward into 1984. Over the next year, during the EJU episodes, I'm going to be highlighting characters in Jaws that will play larger roles, a larger role in the new novel, okay? This next one that we're going to do, the EJU Minute 11, that's going to be a very important minute 11, because we're going to be introduced to two main characters, actually three, that appear in Minute 11 of Jaws, and we don't really know that they're there unless you really look closely. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to highlight that in that Minute 11. Very exciting, but it's going to show you how the expanded Jaws universe minutes, as we extend these out, I'm going to be throwing out little details in there, and I'm not going to say how they're going to work out in the next book, but that's going to form the basis for maybe some character names will be revealed. And that's what we're going to do, is we're going to form a basis for this new novel. It's a very exciting time. There's going to be good weeks and there's going to be bad weeks. I have to promise you that I'm still working as a lineman in the field. And I have to help out, of course, we still have a 12-year-old and a 9-year-old, my two daughters living at the house. My 19-year-old son, he's going to be 20. That's Alex. He's now going to be entering into the Air National Guard. So he's already moved out of the house. But there's still sports and there's school that has to be done with the girls. And Tatiana is stepping up, obviously. She's going to have to go back into this, what we were like in 2022 when I was writing the novel in 2021 and into 2022. And because it's going to be a lot of time that I'm going to have to be down here just hammering this novel out. And I need your support. I have to say, I need your support and all of your words of encouragement, and just the fact that everyone tunes in, that you like these episodes, or you subscribe, or you tell everybody about them, you share, or we're on at Book of Quint over on Instagram, 26, almost 27,000 followers, and still growing. This movement is just an extension of that. And all of that is just adding fuel that keeps this fire lit. And that's what we're going to be doing. I'm going to be My commitment to you is to get this book out. I needed to do this episode because my process has been, my routine has been off. I have yet to fall into this routine, and I got to get back into it if we're going to get this done. So this commitment of myself to you, as well as to Mr. Spielberg, to get him the first novel, it's real. It's real, and it's all part of Jaws Retcon 2027. I promise to you, and I pledge to you, what is coming, what is on the horizon. This is an amazing story. And I believe it has to be brought into this world. I've just a strong belief that that everyone should have access to this. And we're going to try to do this all over again. And it's something very special is coming. The characters are so alive, and they mean so much to this great unknown, the unknown reasons of why we all come back to Jaws and why we all rewatch Jaws. Unknown, untold reasons why we revisit Jaws. Well, that great unknown is going to be indicative of, we're going to touch into that in this next book. With 50 years on, now Jaws moves into its 51st year and so on. We're going to leave our time. I just believe that in the creative act of all of us coming together, all of these energies that I feel every time I go to a book signing, or even just communicating with all of you on Instagram, those energies built and are building this story that has been granted to us. And if I can just get this out, everything is going to make sense. So that's where we are. Episode 100, Jaws Retcon 2027. Thank you very much for tuning in, for your time in listening, and I'm excited to move forward.
Show me the way to go home. I'm tired, I want to go to bed. I had a little think about an hour ago, and it's gotten right to my head. Wherever I may roam, by land or sea or home.
The movie Jaws is copyrighted property of Universal Studios. Any references and sampling from the movie Jaws in this episode is intended to fall within Section 107 of the Copyright Act. The copyrighted materials are fairly used for the purposes of criticism, comment, reporting, teaching, and research. The materials used here are protected by the fair use guidelines of Section 107 of the Copyright Act. All rights reserved to the copyright owners.
Show me the way to go home.
Okay, there's a couple of announcements that I have here. That March 26, 2026, 7:30 p.m., I will be at the Bear Wolf Brewing Company and in north of Boston, in the northern Boston area. That's going to be March 26, 2026, as part of the Lowell's Boat Shop and Museum Winter Speaker Series. That's going to be, I'll be there with Noel Costatino, and we're going to be there talking about Jaws, and we'll have talking about the Book of Quint. It's going to be a great little night there. Then we also have the June 20th and 21st, the Return to Amity, a Jaws Regatta, and Amity After Dark Celebration. That's going to be from 5 to 9 p.m. I will be there. We're going to be there with a new round of Book of Quint, a new round of a special edition hardcover Books of Quint. But I will be there from 5 to 9 p.m. on both June 20th and 21st in Edgartown, Massachusetts, at the Wharf Pub. That is brought to us by ideas.net. So that's very exciting. Edgartown Books. I'm going to be doing a book signing on the 22nd at Edgartown Books, which is going to be, we're going to have more hardcover special editions, and it's going to be an exciting time to celebrate. So it will be my third summer back on the island, and I'm so grateful for Matthew to extend the invitation. The books have been selling out. I believe there's still about 19 or 20 books left at Edgartown Books. So if you give them a call, you can order one for yourself. And with that, I want to thank everybody. This is just so amazing. Episode 100 going in the books. We have Jaws Retcon 2027 launched, and I couldn't do it without all of you. I appreciate everyone, your time in listening to this extra long special edition, special episode 100. Until next episode, I want to bid you farewell and adieu and show me the way to go home.